English translation, 488th contact. Monday, 22nd February 2010, 14:47 hours.
Surprise. I was not expecting you because I figured that you were not coming back until next month. What brings you here today? You are not looking at the world with happiness, you are looking at suffering. I also feel a deep pain in you. I was over there for a cup of coffee when you called. But I am happy about your visit, and it is also convenient for me, because I have some questions that interest me on the one hand, and on the other hand I would like to clarify something that we discussed and decided on last Saturday at our meeting. But now I greet you and welcome you, dear friend.
Also my greetings to you, dear Edward, dear friend. And thank you for your warm welcome. Your observation is not mistaken, because unfortunately an unpleasant matter brings me here to you, which I want to talk to you about, because I need your advice. I would like to talk to you about that privately, but I would like to do it now, and not wait too long.
Of course. What is the sadness that weighs on you, that I can sympathize with, because the expression on your face expresses suffering?
You call it sadness and suffering. Unfortunately, you are right, but please treat what we talk about as a personal and private matter.
Oh, I can feel your pain. Of course, the personal and private as such is preserved. But I do not understand why we should not openly state the reason for this. Yes, we do not have to mention the private when I call up our conversations later and write it down.
There is nothing wrong with that. Then it can be said frankly that yesterday my dear life companion, after 543 years together, went the last path of her existence, and that this is the reason for my sadness and pain.
I can sympathize with your sadness and suffering, and I find it very regrettable that such an event has affected you on another occasion. And that you are grieving and suffering, I can well understand that, and it also proves to me with clear clarity that even when people like you, who have reached a very high level of consciousness, are not immune to falling into grief and suffering when a loved one is torn from life. I would like to have said this, and also put it in writing, if you don't mind, because it is not something that needs to be concealed. So, dear friend, I would now like to hear what you have to say and how I can help you with my advice.
Thank you for your words. They are as correct as everything you teach. Yes, even we, who are higher developed beings in the development of consciousness, are and remain human beings, who are and remain subject to the ups and downs and the joys, the elation and the happiness, as well as the sadness, the suffering, and the pain. There.
Please excuse me for interrupting you, because with what you have just said you are proving to the human beings of Earth, or at least to me, that you are also only simply human beings, despite your high level of consciousness. A fact that I have always been aware of, but unfortunately not many human beings on Earth, who unfortunately regard you as higher beings, who really are not you, but also just simply human beings with mental and emotional impulses, as they also appear with us Earthlings. But please, do not let this stop you from what you want to say.
Then I will begin by saying,
Sorry, today Marianne and Willem are coming, because we want to continue with the English corrections on the Goblet of the Truth. But now that we are in conversation with each other, I cannot go over to the correction work now. It is therefore necessary that I inform Madeleine and tell her that I will come over for correction work later.
That is understandable.
Then I will make a quick phone call and inform Madeleine. So that is done, and so I will continue there with what I have to say.
Thank you, dear friend. You have given me a lot with your words. My thoughts and feelings have become clearer and more peaceful. It was a very great need for me to talk to you and not to someone else. And with that I have done well, my best friend that I have.
It is a very great honor, dear friend, and I thank you for your friendship and for your trust. It is still necessary for me to tell you that my sympathy will accompany you, in which I also include your two daughters, Simya Se and Plaja. Please give them my regards.
Thank you. They also send their love to you. But I see that you are deeply affected and you really feel my sorrow with me.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am really very touched, especially because your grief, your pain and suffering move me so much. You can see that I am. But then, Ptah, dear friend, I think we should now turn to other things, my questions that I have. If it is all right with you, and if you are at all capable of it. But we can also postpone my questions to another time, which I can fully understand with regard to your grief and suffering.
What you have given me with your words of goodness is much more than I expected. This has cleared the air in me and soothed my grief and suffering. Therefore, I am ready to answer your questions and to answer them, if I have the necessary knowledge and my thoughts are not too far off.
Thanks, but if it is too much for you, then we will end the whole thing.
It is true that I have come to terms with all that you have told me and suggested. In fact, your words make everything much easier for me to bear than it was the case with previous similar events. Therefore, I also think that we can continue our conversation.
It is your will. Then I would like to ask if you could clarify with your linguists what I asked you privately recently regarding the definition of Gewalt, which means much more than the English misinterpretation of violence, which can only be understood as an amplified force, or as Heftigkeit, as is also the case in the German language with Violenz, which is originally taken from Latin violentia, that is to say, Heftigkeit, and violent, that is to say, vehement, but was then taken over by German scholars etc. as violent and violent. But violence is much more than vehemence respectively than violence. Your father Svath taught me this, but I do not remember the wording of the declaration.
What you have just said corresponds exactly to what was explained to me by our linguists. In addition, I was taught that the Latin term violent dates back to the old Lyran filent, which means violent. The term was further changed in the course of the time and was incorporated into other languages also in falsifying form and was interpreted in misguided form as Gewalt. But Gewalt has nothing to do with violent and violence, because the old Lyran term in relation to Gewalt means Gewila, and this is defined as using all available coercing means, powers based in the psyche, mind, and consciousness, capabilities and skills in order to carry out and wield monstrous, immense, tremendous actions and deeds. This is the definition of Gewalt, as it is explained by our linguists.
I will have to write that explanation down this time. It corresponds exactly to what Svath explained, so I think I can remember.
It is actually the same explanation.
Did you also find out anything about the languages German and Swiss German?
The information given to me by those who know languages is that the actual German language as well as Swiss German originate from the ancient language tribe Arjn, from which all Germanic, Indo-Germanic, Latin and Celtic languages and dialects have emerged, unfortunately also the very deficient English language, which actually only corresponds to an auxiliary language. Basically, however, it was explained to me that German and Swiss German with their own dialects are two different independent languages, which, however, show a certain relationship. Each language, German and Swiss German, have their own dialects, as is the case only with the main languages and main auxiliary languages. Those who know the earthly languages therefore assume completely wrong premises with regard to the connections between languages and dialects, and also very often with regard to the original origin of words and concepts. In this respect, they often live in assumptions and suppositions without having any fundamental real knowledge. Therefore, Swiss German is erroneously also called German, although it is two different languages.
This brings up the next question. The last time I watched a program on television, it was claimed that scientists had found out that Tutankhamun had died of malaria. But you gave another explanation for this, which is not the same as what was shown in a film on television.
Tutankhamun did not die of malaria, but of a severe leg fracture that was maliciously inflicted on him, causing a protracted inflammation of the blood, which you call blood poisoning. But this was only the indirect cause of his death, because it was caused by a 27-centimeter-long metal needle being driven through his left eye into his brain, killing him respectively, murdering him. That he suffered from malaria, that is certainly correct, but he also had various other ailments, such as a bone disease, etc.
Some of these you have already explained.
That is correct. It was at the 279th official contact conversation on the 3rd of February 2000.
Yes, I remember. But I want your memory, because I did not know when it was. But now I would like to talk about our meeting last Saturday. We decided that in the future, study groups could be formed with only 2 persons. But we decided that if a national group is formed with 3 persons, they have the right to have their own homepage. I presented this to the group because I understood the entirety of our last conversation in this way.
Which was also correct, although I missed that you say something about a homepage for official study groups who should also be entitled to such a platform. However, this should only be the right of a study group as long as no national group with its own homepage exists. If there is such a platform, then the respective study groups have to publish their pages on the national group homepage. And what has to be taken into account, that should actually be clear, namely that the responsibility for the publications on the Internet always remains with the authors and cannot be shifted to the Mother Center.
Understood, that is clear. As far as translations are concerned, we have decided that translations from German into another language may only be made if there is a valid contract between the parent center FIGU, Switzerland, or me and the respective translators. This applies primarily to all books, brochures, and articles which are considered to be works of spiritual teaching and which are written and coded by me. Other brochures and articles, which are not considered to be works of humanities, as well as those written by FIGU group members, require a contractual or other written consent of FIGU Switzerland, Mother Center, or the respective FIGU national groups. This written or contractual consent also applies to translators who are not FIGU members respectively, FIGU study members or FIGU national groups. Translations of any kind must be made available to the respective national group, which has the right to publish the translations on its homepage. Furthermore, it was decided that for such translation work, etc., the respective translator persons and the respective national groups are responsible and have to sign legally and therefore are responsible for it. Further, the decision is that FIGU Switzerland, Mother Center, distances itself from any control of controlling private homepages of non-FIGU members, and that it distances itself from all that private homepage operators publish. This also refers to the fact that there is also no intervention against the fact that private homepage operators of various FIGU groups take material from their homepages and publish it on their own homepages. This is because the whole thing is confusing and uncontrollable for FIGU Switzerland, the parent center, and it is not responsible for it. Therefore, a strict dissociation to such private machinations of such homepage operators takes place in this respect. Consequently, neither an interference nor an order, advice, a permission, or a ban takes place. Consequently, the private remains an absolute private matter, also in this respect. And what remains to be said is that we have decided that in each country, the passive members of Phi Gu should be made aware that it is desirable, for the sake of spreading the mission, etc., that Phi Gu study groups and ultimately Phi Gu national groups are formed from them. This should also result in interested parties in the countries concerned having direct points of contact and sources of information, which is also an opportunity for the national groups to expand. We have also decided that we will not provide assistance in the English language in the future, so that we will only decide to provide information in English translations in the most urgent cases. The English correspondence will have to be kept, unfortunately.
This all corresponds to our sense and to what we have discussed together, and it should also be kept that way.
I have nothing more to say about the whole thing. If everything is in order, as I have explained.
Everything has been well thought out and decided, so it is also in accordance with what is in our mind. But if you can spare some more time for me, I would be grateful if we could exchange a few more words with each other. It is true that our conversation has been very good for me, and I feel more edified and stronger, but—
Ptah, you do not have to keep talking because I understand. Yes, it is all right, because I have informed Madeline that she should tell Marianne and Willem that I will appear later for correction work. It is also very convenient for me that you want to have a few words with me, because I am not in the mood for proofreading at the moment, which will probably continue for some time. Besides, dear friend, you know, you are much more important to me, and of much greater importance than just having to deal with the tiresome and stupid English language. You may also look at it from my point of view.
I do. Yes, my friend, I can actually see what is going on inside you.
Yes, then we can join hands. But there is not much point in this talk. The important thing is that you feel better. So we want to have again a private chat.
Thanks. Your friendship is the most precious thing I have left in my old age. Then,